Hello there, good evening. Week 4 of the lockdown, potentially weeks still remain. But while there's still so much uncertainty in the world, so much uncertainty over futures, so much uncertainty even over what day of the week it is, well, at least there is one thing that is certain. Football Matters is with you every single Monday. Hopefully all of you are staying safe. Hopefully as many of you as possible are staying inside. And hopefully many of you are staying with us over the next hour or so, as we bring you all of the latest news from the world of North East football. I'm Addy Sixsmith. This is Football Matters. All of this coming up on tonight's programme. Decision ratified. The FA confirmed their decision to cancel all seasons in steps 3 to 6 of the football pyramid. We'll have reaction on that decision and an interview with South Shield's chairman, Geoff Thompson. It's up to you. While steps 3 to 6 may know their futures, the National League still wait. In fact, clubs have been asked to vote on their seasons. Gateshead are one of the clubs potentially affected. General Manager Alisha is with us later. And players together. After days of speculation, Premier League players came through last week, launching the Players Together initiative to raise money for the NHS. We'll be reacting to that tremendous move on tonight's programme. So while there may be no football, fear not, there's plenty of news to keep us occupied over the next hour or so. And while the world may be looking different, we're adopting a slightly more familiar Football Matters look every single week, it seems. Not quite back in the TV studio just yet, but the Twitter live broadcast has gone. Onto Zoom we go, which means really only one thing. You can actually see our pundits now rather than just hearing their voices. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I will certainly let you decide. But without any further ado, let's invite them in. Joining me tonight, the man who, let's be honest, was attacking lockdown with a combination of football manager, beer pong with his wife, and writing 5 things we learned from backyard kickabouts with his kids. Decent recipe, if you ask me. It can only be Mark Carruthers joining us right now. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Still recovering from another Prosecco pong defeat of the weekend, but it's just one of those things. I'm getting used to it now. So
yeah,
what happens when you go up against the pros?
We're certainly getting there at least. Hopefully you'll be beating your wife at Prosecco pong, can we just clarify, over the next few weeks as lockdown goes. We would ordinarily be trying to introduce Mr. Ross Gregory, a man who, of course, we haven't had for one programme. We had him for half an episode just last week. We were hoping to have him for the full programme, although his video isn't necessarily showing. Let's see what we can do with that and the wonders of technology. Hopefully we will get Ross on. And I have got an issue with one of our pundits. I've given him the big build-up mark. Of course, we do it every single week. Mr. Olivier Bernard. Unfortunately, technology seems to have defeated Ollie this week, and it doesn't look like he's going to be joining us, regrettably. So I'm going to have to deal with certainly Mark, thankfully, who can operate Zoom. Ross, not necessarily at the moment. Like I said, I was going to give him the big build-up. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that he is joining us at the moment. We can kind of see him there. His name is up in lights, so to speak. But we can't hear him or see him, which isn't, well, it's causing us a few problems, shall we say.
Apologies, guys. I'm not quite sure what's happening with the video here. It was working before.
Well, Ross, at least we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can indeed, Andy. I can indeed.
At least we can hear you, mate. As I seem to say to you every single week, this is nothing personal. Trust me. How are you getting on, Ross? You all right?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good.
Top man. Excellent. Well, I've explained the fact that Ollie is struggling with his technology. He will hopefully be joining us by the end of the hour. I'm not keeping my fingers crossed for the entire 60 minutes, otherwise they'll go undone. But without him, we will crack on with you, Ross, even if you aren't on video quite yet. Mark, we've got you for video and audio, thankfully, or unthankfully, depending on our viewers' perceptions. So let's crack on with the programme. And let's head straight into the headline story this evening, which, of course, well, it's the news that's affected so many of our North East clubs over the past 7 days or so. The FA ratifying its original decision to cancel all football from steps 3 to 6 of the lower tiers. No titles, no promotions, no relegation. Done and dusted until next season as it stands. It's a big call, especially when you consider so many leagues are playing the waiting game. The National League, of course, Premier League, EFL, etc. And it's a call that's affected many, many clubs who are chasing promotion, titles, playoffs. And we're going to hear from one affected club right now if technology is going to work for us. I'm delighted to welcome onto the programme, hopefully, Mr. Geoff Thompson, who is South Shield's chairman, of course. At the minute, we haven't got him on video, but we should have him on audio. Geoff, can you hear us at the very, very least?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Excellent. We will try and fix this video problem because it's a problem that has afflicted Ross Gregory already as well.
There we go.
We can see you as if by magic. We can suddenly.
There
see
we are.
Geoff, great to see you. I wish it was in better circumstances. Firstly, how are you and the family doing at this difficult time?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking. I guess we're in the same boat as everybody else. So a very difficult time for everybody.
Yeah.
All we can do is observe the rules and make sure that we're, doing the right thing by our family and friends, and hopefully our actions will, see the end of this terrible pandemic, hopefully over the next few weeks and months. But yeah, tough time for all of us, I'm sure.
We really hope so. If not for our sanity, if for nothing else. I think
I'm getting lots of jobs done at home that I wouldn't normally get done. So.
Plenty of DIY going on around the Thompson house all day.
Well,
let's talk the football because, of course, there's been so much news in the past few weeks. Let's go right back to the beginning, and this, before we come on to the final ratified decision. Talk us through what has happened from the beginning, from the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, from the first whisperings that you were hearing to where we stand now from a South Shields perspective.
Yeah, well, basically, I reached out to Mark Harris, the chairman of the Northern Premier League, the day before we heard on social media the announcement that the season for steps 3 and below were null and void.
Yeah.
So I'd reached out to Mark. He couldn't say anything official, kind of hinted that might be the decision.
Right.
Obviously, I registered with him my concerns at the time. And then, of course, sure enough, that following day on social media, we heard that the season had been expunged, null and void. And really what followed thereafter was, I registered my concerns, and not to be I'm not trying to be difficult here. I recognise, as we said at the introduction, there's a lot more important things to consider at the moment. But on the basis that football will return at some point, what I've said and what a whole host of other clubs have said is that we wanted a fair process. We wanted some consistency. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of many, many others, the decision needn't have happened so quickly. So firstly, I guess in no particular order, the way that we heard is one concern. That might be slightly petty, but we would have liked to have been consulted in a better way.
Yeah.
And so the way we heard, the timing of the decision, we think was premature.
Yeah.
And thirdly, as I just said, we want a consistent approach across and down the entire pyramid.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the difficulty. Geoff, we'll come back onto this, but we have to welcome to the programme Mr. Olivier Bernard, who, we for any of us who know Ollie, we know he doesn't necessarily own a watch or a clock or any sort of timing device. Better late than never, Ollie. How are you doing? Or has he gone? He's disappeared, apparently. Geoff, let's continue. Don't worry about Ollie. I'm sure he'll find his way. Oh, he's back again. Back again. Ollie, can you hear us? No. Geoff, let's carry on with you, shall we? Because
all right. Well, if he returns, you can stop me again. But just to say, so that was the sort of first we heard on social media.
Yeah.
What then followed was myself and a whole host of other club chairmen and other people got involved in just trying to understand how that decision had been reached. And as I say, to try and register our concern.
Yeah.
That led quite rapidly to an open letter that we drafted to the FA.
Yeah.
And then what then also followed was a legal letter. I must stress though, none of that, particularly the legal letter, was meant to be adversarial and difficult. No. We were trying to invite consultation and discussion and dialogue, and really imploring the FA and the FA Council not to ratify the decision. And obviously, we now know that sadly that wasn't the case. So the FA Council did ratify the decision.
Yeah.
And we're now in discussions with our legal advisors about where we go next.
One thing I did want to ask you, Geoff, because this was an issue that cropped up all the way through, seemingly. How much contact was there with the FA throughout this process?
Well, very little. And what we now know is that the Alliance Committee, which is made up, of course, of the chair of Isthmian, the chair of Southern, the chair of Northern Premier, and is chaired by the vice chair of the FA. That group, and I think also with a couple of representatives from steps 5 and below, they were asked on Friday the 20th of March to reach a decision. So they were asked to, debate, come up with a recommendation, reach a decision, and they had to report back on Monday the 23rd. So literally, you have a situation where between Friday the 20th and Monday the 23rd, this very small group of people, with the greatest respect to the individuals involved, a very small group, have had a series of meetings or a series of WebEx meetings, and come up with that recommendation. Now, interestingly, we know for a fact that the Northern Premier League board and the chairman of the Northern Premier League had recommended a different outcome to just null and void. They were proposing points per game and maybe no relegation. And likewise, the Isthmian League chair recommended the same. So there was definitely a split view at that Alliance Committee.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, unfortunately, somehow, and I haven't seen the minutes of the meeting, and I would like to see them in due course, but what happened was that recommendation of null and void did get carried. And unfortunately, what then happened, despite our efforts to sort of try and head it off at the pass and stop the FA ratifying it by the FA Council, what happened was you've got over 100 people involved at the FA Council, and there were no minutes. There was no board pack. There was just simply 4 or 5 questions or voting questions that the FA Council members were asked to vote on. And of course, one of which was the decision to ratify the decision for steps 3 to 7. So without me rambling, what I'm saying is, our concern, my concern, and that of many, many other people, is the speed of the decision-making process and the timing of it, the lack of consultation, and also, probably more importantly, the issue that this decision now represents for the integrity of the football pyramid, because suddenly we've got a different situation. Now, of course, we do have to wait and see what happens with steps 1 and 2, but let's compare and contrast. Hello there.
We got him.
We've now got Ollie.
There he is. You're having a brilliant time, Ollie. We're listening to Geoff talk about the situation South Shields are in and many other football clubs, but better late than never, Ollie.
Well,
thank you for having me.
We got round technology in the first, but we'll come to you, Ollie, in a bit. But you join us at the time.
I've almost finished my sort of rant, if you like, and I hope it's more than a rant, because I've tried to be objective, recognising the difficult situation the FA were in. But imagine we've got, by contrast, steps 1 and 2, where the board of steps 1 and 2 have proposed a resolution. They've asked the clubs to approve that resolution, that resolution being to end the season now. And then they've also allowed a timetable to get those participants, those clubs, to vote on the matter. Now, if you compare that process with what's happened for steps 3 to 7, i.e., there's a meeting held between Friday the 20th of March and Monday the 23rd with no consultation whatsoever. And the decision has sadly been ratified by the council. But my point is, it's a very significant difference between that process and what's happening with steps 1 and 2.
Sure. And the big word for me, Geoff, just to go back to it, is integrity here. How badly do you think that this affects, in the short and the long term, the integrity at this level of football?
Well, I really do. And, some people will argue, oh, look, Geoff's just sitting there making these points because South Shields Football Club were in a strong position, with 9 games left, 75 to 80% of the season finished. They might argue, well, yeah, he would say that. But let's just stop and think about this a little bit more, because firstly, we don't know when it's going to be safe to play football again. So we're sacrificing a season that's been played 75 to 80% complete. Yes, we all recognise we can only start playing football when it's safe to do so, but we're sacrificing this season for a season that we don't know when we'll be able to start. And indeed, what happens if, God forbid, this coronavirus, there's a second or third wave, and the whole integrity of the following season is compromised, and the outcome of the following season is compromised. So that's one point I'd kind of try and hammer home and emphasise. But at the same time, back to consistency. You can't have one rule, with the greatest respect to Liverpool and the Premier League, and for the EFL and for National League, and a different rule for steps 3 and below. It's completely against the whole principles of the football pyramid and trying to reward success and encourage people to climb through the pyramid and secure promotions. It's just completely and utterly wrong.
So, bearing in mind that we are up to a full complement of pundits now, Mark, Ross, Ollie, do you kind of want to dive in and ask Geoff anything about this current situation before we talk about these next steps that are going to be taken?
No, I just briefly heard Geoff talking, and I definitely understand his point of view. Myself, when I heard about the FA, I was quite surprised that it wasn't across all leagues.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether it's a Premier League or it's amateur. I think football is football in the end of the day, and at every level it should have been it should have been a sentence for everybody.
Yeah.
But a season like this for let's say for South Shield, is it gonna have an impact on the following season or this season coming?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Obviously, we'd made assumptions in our financial forecasts that we were going to secure promotion. That's not, that's not arrogance. It's just we were hoping to, and we planned accordingly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the revenue assumptions that we've made for next year clearly now are flawed because, well, as I've just said, we don't even know when the season might be able to commence. But secondly, we were expecting higher gates in National League North than we've currently got in the Northern Premier.
Yeah.
So there are financial implications. We'll dust ourselves down and we'll go again. But I can't pretend anything other than it's going to, it's certainly had a financial impact. It's not easy. And, we're not alone. It's interesting. I've now listened to literally 150 plus different clubs who are involved in this action to try and get the FA to change their mind. And it's quite incredible how people feel completely let down. And it's not just club chairman. It's about, the volunteers. It's obviously the players, management, the fans who spent their money watching throughout this season, and indeed all the sponsors. Suddenly, all of that has been written off as though it counted for nothing. Yeah. And that can't be right.
I think from... Go on, Ross, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Geoff, I've seen, obviously, and we've spoken about this, myself and you on a couple of occasions, but I've seen it, obviously you've been quite active on social media, on Twitter with some of your comments and opinions, and you've received quite, at times you've had a lot of support, and at times you've had people disagreeing with you, and knowing you as I know you, I know that won't affect you and doesn't bother you. But does there come a point where you have to step back from this, or how far are you prepared to take it? And secondly, one of the accusations that's kind of been levelled at yourself and South Shields is would you be doing this? Would you be pushing this as quite as hard if you were 12th in the table or 10th in the table, or does the fact that you are top and 12 points clear, or were top and 12 points clear at the time, is that part of the reason why you feel so strongly about it?
Well, I don't deny, a couple of good questions there, Ross. I don't deny clearly the fact that we're sitting top with, a 12-point lead and 9 games to go. Clearly we feel aggrieved about the decision. But I would say, hand on heart, if we were sitting mid-table, I would still make the same points about the importance of protecting the integrity of the pyramid, because, to just treat one group of clubs differently to another across and down that pyramid, in my opinion, is quite wrong. As far as the negativity I've received, all I would say is I fully understand that there's far more important things at the moment, given everyone's health worries and concerns, and both individually and our families. It's a huge challenge that we're all facing, and I'm not suggesting that football in any way is even remotely as important as any of that. But my point has always been that at some point we will, I hope, overcome this. Football will return, and I want to have seen, I believe, a fair set of decisions applied across and down the pyramid. Yeah. So I'm hoping that answers all of those points that you raised, Ross. But yes, in summary, I would be as strong about it. I would be supporting the actions, whatever the position that we're in. Yeah. And as far as next steps are concerned, again, I'm not trying to be aggressive nor sort of litigious, but we are looking at what steps can we now take.
Yeah.
We've had some discussions with our lawyers. I say we because there's a whole group of clubs. I mean, literally measured in, well, we don't know how many are going to sign up, but certainly it's been over 160 prior to the FA Council decision. And by the way, that number was growing. And it's not just men's football, it's affected the disabled game, it's affected the women's game. Yeah. So, you know, this has far-reaching implications across and down the pyramid and across a wide perspective of different participants. Yeah. So, sorry, not to tie myself in knots. What I'm saying is that we are taking further legal advice. There is an arbitration process that we're looking to potentially invoke.
Yeah.
But, you know, I said earlier, a lot does depend on what happens at steps 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Because, for example, if steps 1 and 2 are null and void, and therefore the same rules have been applied there, then we would clearly have less of an argument.
Yes, yeah. Just one from me, Geoff, and a couple of final ones before we do let you get on and enjoy your evening and get back to the DIY that you're going to be doing around shit. But going forward, and this is short-term and long-term, I suppose, what does it do for the trust element between the football clubs at that level of football and the FA? Is this almost like a nuclear bomb when it comes down to how much trust there is? Because there has to be trust between the national governing body and the various clubs. Has that been eroded away now? Is there still hope that that trust can be developed again or not?
Well, yeah, I think there is a big problem there. I think there's an underlying issue around governance, fairness, you know, transparency, and how these decisions are made. And I do repeat, you know, I know it's absolutely incredibly difficult and unique circumstances, but nevertheless, there needs to be consistency. So, yeah, it's a tough one. I'm still hoping that through this process that we're following with further legal input, that we can, you know, maybe get people to see sense. But again, I repeat, a lot hinges on what's happening at steps 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I note with interest some different decisions in Scotland, for example, different decisions in Belgium and in Holland.
Yeah.
So, and indeed, you know, the RFU made different decisions. I know it's a different sport, but, you know, you start to collect a whole range of examples of where a fairer and more inclusive decision was made. And for some reason that hasn't applied to steps 3 to 7. And as I say, I wait with real interest to see what happens at steps 1 and 2. And that, quite frankly, back to your bombshell, you know, if indeed there is a different decision made at 1 and 2, then I think that really does undermine the integrity of the entire pyramid. And you know what? I mentioned a moment ago about the various people that I've spoken to over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And, you know, the strength of feeling has surprised me. Sadly, there's a lot of people thinking, you know, do they really want to continue? You know, people who've really put their heart and soul into it. And I'm talking about, you know, players, management, volunteers, sponsors, fans. So I do think, I know you might think I'm really over-egging it, but I really strongly feel that the FA have really misunderstood the implications of the decision they've made.
Just very, very finally, and this is without Mark or Ollie or Ross, if you guys want to dive in on this, but hand on heart, Geoff, I know it obviously depends on the decisions at Premier League level, at EFL level, etc. Hand on heart, can you see any way that this decision will be changed or amended in any way, shape or form that allows South Shields and every other club at these levels from steps 3 down to 7 to complete this season in any way, shape or form or not?
Well, I know I repeat myself, but if there's, you know, what happens at steps 1 and 2, EFL and Premier League, the decisions that are made there will influence how we move forward for steps 3 and below. And, you know, there is this arbitration process that we might invoke. There's also the independent football ombudsman that we may well approach. So there's a myriad of options open.
Yeah.
All of them have difficulties. And, you know, all of them are just going to consume more time, effort and money. I repeat finally, I guess, that if we have a consistent approach, steps 1 and 2, EFL and Premier League, then, you know, quite frankly, everybody that I've been speaking to from steps 3 down over wouldn't have a problem. But what we do have a problem with is that inconsistency.
Yeah, very, very fair points, Geoff. Gents, do you want to jump in very finally for Geoff, or are we happy to let him go and continue on with his evening, considering he's given us a good half hour?
Just one, Geoff. I know, let's imagine that, the season is a void. I presume you do have players on the contract, players who are running out of contract for the summer. How do you see this season coming? Do you think you're capable of achieving with the same squad, or with the departure? How are you looking at it?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we went into this sort of what we called our hybrid model, which sounds very grand. Basically, we've got 16 players who are full-time professional now, and the balance are all contracted. So we've got a whole squad that are contracted either full-time or part-time. So the squad is secure. There's obviously some financial implications. I mean, obviously the Chancellor's announcement about furloughing employees, that has applied to our playing squad as it has to other members of staff at the football club. Yeah. But the point is, at some point when we're told it's safe to return, that squad of players will continue. I'm delighted to say we've secured them, and they're all, our intention is fully that they continue with us. They're contracted to do so I don't expect there to be any change. Yeah. And as soon as we're able, we'll be starting, new pre-season preparation and getting ready for next season. So, it's business as usual. We'd go again. There are some, as I just said a little while back, there are some financial implications because that squad was built assuming we would get into National League North. Yeah. So we've got probably a cost base there that, one wouldn't want to carry on forever. But again, we would go again and try and secure promotion.
Well, Geoff, thank you very, very much for your time tonight. I appreciate we've kept you on and chewed your ear off probably for
not at all.
For a good half hour or so. But keep us updated with the legal process. Best of luck with it. And obviously, most importantly, we hope everyone at South Shield stays safe and we see everyone back at Mariners Park and the football back as and when it's healthy enough to do so. And
thank you all, and please stay safe, lads. Take care.
Thank you very much, Geoff. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Geoff Thompson, of course, chairman of South Shield Football Club. Guys, before we move into the National League, how do you, now that we've got a full complement of pundits, which is tremendous, by the way, I didn't think that was going to be coming tonight. Thank you all for getting over the technical issues. How do we react to that, what Geoff's been saying? Some strong comments there from Geoff.
He's got a point. When it comes to the pyramid and, the one rule for everybody, I think, it would be awkward for the league to come back and say that, it's one rule for one and another rule for the others. But I see it happening, and he has, taking it away from Liverpool would be sacrilege. But it has to be done. I think for everybody to be happy in terms of, I think you've got to take it away from Liverpool, and that's going to be painful for them.
Yeah. Would you take it away from Newcastle, Ollie, if the shoe was on the other foot?
I would.
Not that it's unlikely to be taken away from Newcastle.
It would be painful. Don't get me wrong. It would be painful, but if you wanna, Geoff's definitely right. If you wanna, put everybody under the same umbrella, you're gonna have to do that. It would have killed me. Don't get me wrong. I would still think, I would have, Newcastle would have had it, and it would have been remembered as Newcastle would have had it. But I think there's you've got to content everyone.
Interestingly enough, gents, just to kind of move things on a little bit, and we are going to be coming on to the Premier League situation. Of course, we can't get through the programme without mentioning that and the Players Together initiative. We had a question come in from SAFC Dolphins on social media in the last couple of days. Do you think many non-league clubs will be non-existent after this crisis? How will the whole situation affect the league pyramid structure? It's a pretty open-ended question, that. Mark, Ross, from a media perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that was something I was going to mention to Geoff before he left, but obviously didn't get the opportunity. But I think, you don't like to see it, but I wouldn't be surprised if South Shield still move up the leagues, because there might be clubs above them who unfortunately fold because of this the financial issues surrounding clubs at the minute.
Yeah.
Which, like I say, I repeat, you wouldn't want that to happen to any club, but we've seen it at clubs with at Bury and National League clubs and above, Football League clubs, that there is major financial problems around some who are living hand to mouth. I think the landscape could change quite considerably in some clubs that we've come to know and love over the last period of time, few years, could find themselves having to drop down and maybe start again.
Mark, what do you think? You've been unusually quiet.
I'm just taking everything in.
Nice.
I think when you look at it, it's not just football's going to be affected by this. Every level of businesses and that will have a knock-on impact. I spoke to 3 or 4 chairmen over the last few days, and they've all said, getting sponsors in is going to be more difficult, or persuade sponsors to continue their commitment to clubs is going to be difficult. There's just not going to be as much money in around businesses. So I think, as Ross said there probably are going to be clubs right the way across the pyramid will be in danger. There's already been 10 across the country have withdrawn for leagues for next season, and that's without even knowing when next season's going to get underway. So it is a very, very serious situation. It's a very challenging situation. And I think, to answer the question, I think, there will be clubs will go under, and there will be clubs that will fall because of this.
It's a scary, scary situation, especially when things being done so far in advance of any decisions being made, like you mentioned there, Mark. But we'll leave steps 3 to 7 behind for now. What about the National League? Because when we spoke to Spennymoor Town boss Jason Ainsley last week, everything was still up in the air. Everyone was still waiting for a decision, and, well, we still are, kind of. The National League has advised clubs in its 3 divisions to vote in favour of ending the season. If that vote passes, then these clubs will be asked to help determine the outcomes of that season through further polls. Now, if you are keeping up with that, many congratulations to you, because it took me about 6 times to read it to try and make any sense of that. Ross, let's go to you first before we go to our guest, Alisha Henry, the General Manager of Gateshead, and find out her thoughts. What are your thoughts on this as a way forward? We've seen the FA steps 3 to 6, 3 to 7 turn around and say, right, the season's over. We've seen the National League now turn around and say, it's up to the clubs. Do you see this as a good way forward or not?
I think it's more preferable than a couple of individuals at a handful of leagues making the decision. I think all clubs are part of that league, and all will surely want to have their say and should have their say, because they're the ones who've contributed to that season. It's their season. They're the ones who put all the toil and sweat and money and effort into the season. So for them to have a say in how the season is concluded, whether it is concluded, whether they push it down the line for another day, I think it is ultimately the right decision. I would put my money on the National League voting as a whole to finish the season now. That if I had to put some money on it, and I've not done any research and I've not canvassed any clubs and such, it'll be interesting to hear if we get Gator on later as to what their thoughts may be on it. But I think for a lot of clubs, you take the clubs who are at the top and you take the clubs who are at the bottom fighting against relegation out of it, and you've got a lot of clubs in that middle bit of the league who I think will just be quite happy just to finish the season now. But to give them the opportunity to vote and have their say on it, I think is the right way forward.
Interesting. Right. Well, this is all news that affects the likes of Spennymoor, it affects the likes of Darlington, of course, and it affects Gateshead as well. And I'm delighted to say that we can welcome their General Manager, Alisha Henry, onto the programme. Alisha, first and foremost, you are connecting to audio, it's telling me. First and foremost, most importantly, can you hear us and see us?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you as well for being patient. I appreciate it. Most importantly, how are you doing in this very, very strange time?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I mean, we're decent. Once we got the technical gremlins out of the system and got the programme underway, and we could start talking football. Ollie was about half an hour late, but to be fair, that's pretty early for Ollie when all's said and done. And see him grinning there, that's okay. Let's come on to this decision, obviously, because this is the situation that Gateshead finds itself in. And we'll come on to the actual decision shortly. But what a couple of years for Gateshead. I mean, it's the latest in a ridiculous few years. Nearly lost the club. Fans save it. The FA Cup run this year. Now this coronavirus pandemic. What on earth has it been like to be part of Gateshead and now have this situation develop as well?
I mean, it's strange to say the least. I think obviously after last year, you would hope this year would be a bit more smooth sailing, and then coronavirus comes along and it knocks it back. But no, it's been a bit of a crazy 12 to 24 months, but the club's still standing, so that's one thing at least.
Best to look at the positives out of it, I'm sure. I think all of us can definitely take a leaf out of your book on that front. But this situation that we find ourselves in right now, how has this been explained to yourselves as a National League North club, as Gateshead FC? How has the situation been explained?
I mean, our staff itself has been furloughed, so we're kind of like on the back burner at the moment. A lot of stuff's going through the chairman and the directors. I know obviously the National League it's a complicated situation, and that's through the leagues. And first and foremost, obviously, it's the safety of the fans and the players that come first for us. So that's always at our first opinion is the safety of everyone. The communication, obviously, there has been communication. In the president that you're on, you can't say it's been bad and you can't say it's been good because it's such an unknown circumstance. So everyone is trying their hardest in what is an unprecedented situation. So we can't really complain that much because we don't know what's happening. Neither do anyone else, really.
So, I mean, from that basis, comparing to what the FA have done in the lower leagues, we've just had Geoff Thompson from South Shields on. And, of course, South Shields, like many other clubs, aren't happy with the decision being taken by the FA. Is this the fairest way that you see the National League progressing at the moment, given the fact that this, like you rightly say, is such a strange, unprecedented situation we find ourselves in?
I mean, my personal opinion is I don't know how it's going to end, whether it's null or void points per game, whether it's as standing as it is now.
Yeah.
And as obviously as a club in the National League, I couldn't say we're leading one way or the other because we just don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've seen the decision that they've made further down the leagues, and that's not concerning us as Gateshead necessarily at all. The decision was made. It's one that's accepted, and you move on. Obviously, the safety of people come first and foremost. But whatever the National League decide, we'll have to get on board and move forward with that.
Yeah. So I know they've talked to the National League about these options that will be there if the clubs decide that it's going to be very, very much a case of we end the season. How would Gateshead vote, do you think, in that regard? Would you vote to end the season and decide from there on how to end the season, or where would you stand on it?
I mean, my personal, there's too many variables at the moment. There's too many unknowns. Obviously, it is tough because where you stand at the moment, the league still technically hasn't finished. It runs to the 25th of April. Yeah. You don't know where you're going to be next week. For all we know, the numbers. The numbers, I say numbers, you can't really call the numbers of deaths, and the testing could go down, it could go up. You just got to play it by day. And then when the vote goes in, obviously, I'm sure the chairman and the board will make the decision that's best based on the club.
Just a final one from me before I bring in Mark, Ross and Ollie to ask you any questions that they might have. The financial repercussions, a lot's been made about the National League Board receiving this £2 million from the Premier League. I think it was £13,636 per club for the National League club, North and South, that is. Is that anywhere near enough or not?
No, obviously it's just an advance of money that would come anyway, so it's that does need to be looked at. Obviously, that I think that's across the board though, and that's not just go to the National League. Obviously, even the EFL payments need looked at because clubs are going to struggle and clubs are going to go bust. And I think that's from AFL downwards. The amount of clubs now, I have no doubt will not be here come July, August time.
Yeah, it's frightening. I'm going to throw you open to, I would say the Wolves, but they're really, really nice in fairness. Mark, Ollie, Ross, any questions for Alisha?
I'll go first. I think looking at what happened last year off the field, obviously myself and Ross were quite involved in seeing what was going on, and just how different is the environment that you're working in these days just compared to where it was, say, 12 months ago?
Well, I mean, the environment's not great at the moment because I'm in the house with two yappy chihuahuas, but When I'm at the club, it's like a completely different club. You've been down there yourself recently. It's the positivity. That's the word that we use often around the club now. It's just such a positive atmosphere, and everyone's working towards the right goal this time, and everyone's working as a team, pushing forward. Obviously, we did have hopes of getting the playoffs and hopefully maybe sneaking up this year. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. We'll go again next year and push towards getting promoted.
I think from a Football Matters point of view, we haven't really reported on what happened last year because the show wasn't around. But just how close was the club to going?
I mean, the stories I could tell, you probably wouldn't believe, and I think.
We'll have you back on next week as well, Alisha. We'll keep you on phone with a weekly feature. Tell us all the stories.
I'll have to bring my book out because I've got that many. Mark knows itself how close it was. I mean, it was probably 24 hours away from going bust, and that's not exaggerating at all, even less. There was a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of working day in, day out just to try to get where we are now. And there was a number of people behind the scenes putting kind of their life and soul into it just to get it back and get it running. So the fact that the club's running but also competing is amazing. I always say that it's great to have a club, but if we weren't competing, what would have been the point? And we're competing, and we're showing that we should be in the National League, and we are fighting for a place and fighting for promotion. Yeah.
Ross, Ollie, anything to add?
Would you rather be in a house lockdown with 2 yappy chihuahuas or in an office with Joseph Calla?
Oh, I'll pick the chihuahuas any day of the week.
We like asking the hard questions on Football Matters, Alisha, don't worry. Hard-hitting journalism. Ollie,
I've got one more.
Sorry.
What about 2 yappy chihuahuas or a day in an office with Dominic Skur?
Well, I mean, it depends because, sometimes we used to go on a sports hall and I used to beat him during one-on-ones, and he'll deny that until he's blue in the face, but that is true. I always used to come out, but I don't know. I do miss Dom. I do miss his little quiff going on there. So
I'll tell you what, we'll leave the bullying of individual employees. Ollie, anything left to add before we let Alisha get on with her evening?
No, not really this time. Been listening carefully. So, I'm following from far. Hopefully I'll get some tickets this year.
You're more than welcome. You're all more than welcome to come to the next have a game. You're more than welcome to come.
I think we're going to try and fit in about 6 football matches a day if coronavirus is pretty much done and dusted by the end of the summer, Alisha. So we will most certainly take you up on that offer. But thank you very, very much for being patient with us tonight. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. And like we said to Geoff, we can only wish you, everyone at Gateshead, the very, very best of luck over the next few weeks and months. And most importantly, just stay safe, all right?
No problem, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alisha. Take care, all right? So that was Alisha Henry. She is the general manager, of course, of Gateshead FC. Guys, it's a difficult time for Gateshead. We are starting to run out of time, and I appreciate we've got plenty more to get through, including Premier League. So hopefully we've pretty much covered everything from Gateshead fans' perspective that we could there. Let's head on to this Players Together initiative because, Ollie, I really want to kind of tap into you with regards to this. The players recently, in the last few weeks, depending on your perspective in the Premier League, had been receiving pretty unfair criticism, shall we say, as to what they were going to do with their wages during this coronavirus pandemic. Not to name names, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, for instance, had said these players should take a pay cut and should play their parts, unquote. That criticism, it looks really unfair right now. The players announcing their Players Together initiative last week to help generate funds for the NHS, distribute them where they're needed most. Marcus Rashford came out and said that they want to help in the best way possible. Getting money to the right place is a massive thing. Ollie, I have to start with you with regards to this. You were very, very fair. You were very, very honest last week, saying you wouldn't have passed on your wage if you were a footballer in this situation.
No, I mean that's not for the club to say we're going to take money off you. Players do what they want with their wages. And and I applaud the players who are coming out and say they're gonna give money away to the NHS, but it's not. I don't believe in saving businesses. Players get paid to do a job. They do their job, and they do what they want with the money they receive. If they want to spend it, I'm happy for them to do it, and I encourage everyone to do it. But if they don't want to, they should be allowed to if they have other things to look after, then it's their money in the end of the day. You can't just say no, it's not acceptable because yet they earn that money.
So your reaction to this initiative is very, very positive in the sense that it's given the power, or the players have taken the power and decided that, hang on, this is our decision to make now. We want to go ahead and do this. Your reaction's pretty positive to that, I imagine.
It is. For me, it's, seeing players are coming out and trying to help and do the little bit. I think it's encouraging. Yeah. It shows that, players got heart and they believe that the NHS is something you should look after, and I encourage that. Where the wrong things are for me is for businesses or football club who are trying to take wages off to save their club.
Ross, does this feel like almost a groundbreaking moment then, bearing in mind what Ollie said there regarding the events of the last few days? Does this feel like a bit of a groundbreaking moment for Premier League players and the relationships with clubs and, of course, owners as well?
I think so. I think first and foremost, I've never had any kind of doubt that the players wanted to do the right thing.
Yeah,
they just wanted to do it the right way that they felt was best for the community, was best for whatever charities or organisations that they wanted to support. They didn't just want to go down that route of, right, here's, we'll take 20% off my wages, but we don't really know where it's going to, and it might go into the clubs, it might go into an owner's pocket, it could go anywhere. They wanted it done on their terms. So I think they've stood up to their clubs and their owners and their chairman in that sense, and they've gone absolutely the right way, and it's really pleasing to see. I know, you talk about clubs taking on putting staff into furlough, and we've seen that Spurs have reversed their decision to do it today, which is really fantastic news. Let's see if Newcastle do the same. I very much doubt they will because of a certain individual connected to that club. But we can only cross our fingers and hope that they do come to a right decision on that front, and take the lead from the players. The lead that the players have shown with their gestures can hopefully be replicated elsewhere.
Well, let's focus on the players. Mark, I want to ask you about one in particular, because it's if reported to be believed, it's the player who was practically leading this, and it's a North East lad, and Jordan Henderson, pitching the idea to fellow captains. What does this do you think, for the reputation of the players? Because 2 weeks ago, there was all these, like I mentioned before, all these arguments that the players were greedy, they weren't helping out when they should have been, etc., etc. And all the while, they were planning this. Jordan Henderson at the forefront of it. What does it do for the reputation of the players now that they're going out and doing it?
It was interesting to see when the, and I don't even want to name him, if I'm honest, but the MP in question, when the decision was made, he came out and sort of praised the players, but almost looked as if he was taking a little bit of credit for it, which left a bit of taste in my mouth. God knows what it must have felt for the players, because it was disgusting, if I'm honest. Yeah. Jordan Henderson, I don't think we should be surprised. I think as a player, as a man, as a character, as a leader, he has developed on and off the pitch over the last 5 years, probably longer than that, into someone who is a man of integrity, someone who, young people who are growing up want to be footballers can look up to. And as a North East lad, I think as people from the North East, it should make us proud that he's the leading figure. Yeah. My issue with all of this, and I presume we're moving on, I don't want to see the NHS viewed as a charity, because it's not a charity. And that's my big issue. It's brilliant what everyone's doing. I'm not criticising that. It just should never be seen as a charity. It's a state-funded thing that we should be very proud of. And it shouldn't be down to the people of this country to fund it. It should be down to the government to use taxes to do that, not people to give handouts. That's honestly not a criticism. I just hate the fact that it's seen as a charity.
No, and it's very, very fair of you. I mean, without kind of turning this into, an episode.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be too political about it. But, what we've seen is...
Rename the show Political Matters.
We all know what's happening.
The brand, the marketing, etc. It's not going to be done. We don't have that much money in the pot, unfortunately.
we all know what's happened to the NHS over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's why people are having to fundraise for it, which is amazing. It's wonderful to see, and it's one of the most heartwarming things of what's going on right now. But it shouldn't have to happen. That's the point I'm making.
A couple of months back, you had people wanting to sell the NHS, and now Boris, is changed his mind, and is the best thing ever to the humankind. So without getting too political, I think people are messing about a bit. But hey ho.
Ollie, you've got a strong enough opinion on football, mate. I hesitate to think what your political opinion would be. It beggars belief.
Let's quit it.
Let's get back to the football then in that case. The donations, I think the most striking thing for me is once the players, obviously, because it's not a prerequisite, not every single player has to donate. It's entirely up to the individual players to go to the board of that club and say, we're going to be donating X amount. What strikes me about this is that donation is anonymous. No one will find out, or very, very hopefully, touch wood, no one will find out what player has donated what amounts of money. How important is that when it comes down to, and I'm not attacking my own industry here, but how important is that to keeping those players' names and the amounts that they're donating away from the media, do you think, Ollie, from a former player's perspective?
It's important that it's done because not everybody's got the same salary. Not everybody can afford to give as much, to one another. Yeah. So I think it's important to keep it on the loop and make it, like a global donation or anonymous is perfect. It's going to cover a lot of players, because a young player and a day-to-day starting 11 is not the same, and we need to understand that as people.
Yeah, of course. Right, okay, we'll move on from that. Well, we've got one final comment to make, and it refers to what Ross was talking about as well. Obviously, Spurs reversing their decision to furlough the staff, the non-playing staff today or earlier on this afternoon. Newcastle, of course, still stand. Gary Neville called for a transfer ban on the club, on Newcastle, that is, for furloughing their staff. Thoughts on that, gents?
The two things aren't linked. That's what I would say. Furloughing staff isn't really linked to the transfer market. So I do find myself agreeing with Gary Neville on a lot, but I think with this, I don't agree with the furloughing, by the way. I will say that. I think, I don't think a club that have made a profit over the last 12 months should be furloughing staff. But I don't believe that you can punish them in the transfer market for that. If they breach transfer regulations, then fair enough. But I don't think you can withdraw their ability to trade in the transfer market because of something like this.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, let's leave the Premier League behind. I'm sure there'll be a lot more debate on this in the coming weeks to come. So we'll probably adopt much more of a show towards that in the next few weeks. But very, very finally almost finally for this week's programme, I appreciate it's been a long one, but there's been an awful lot to discuss. And there's one thing left to discuss on this, and that's Sunderland Till I Die. The big question being, Ollie, have you watched it yet? Or...
Yeah, I watched the first season. It was quite powerful. Obviously, I haven't touched the second season, but I did enjoy the fact that we've seen, Martin, which I've met at Rangers, so I know the way he's working and the way things are running, and I suppose it's quite surprising how different details that we don't think of are quite important and maybe vital for the clubs. So,
well, obviously, sadly, last week we couldn't get Martin McFadden from Love Supreme on the programme. Technical issues did prevent that. Hopefully, I'm delighted to say that joining us now, very, very patiently, if he is indeed here, from Roker Report, is Niall Bromley. Niall, can you hear us, see us? Because we can't see you at the minute.
I can hear you, mate. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Well, I'll tell you what, at least we've got the audio. We will hope, like Geoff Thompson earlier, and Ross, of course, as well, that the video will join us post-haze. But at least we have the audio and you can hear us. Thank you very, very much for being patient. I appreciate it's been a long programme, lots to get in this evening on everything in North East football. We have to talk to you, of course, about Sunderland Till I Die. How many times have you watched the series now?
I've watched it. Well, I've watched it once, and then I've started rewatching it again, obviously in preparation for the show. But yeah, I've seen it fully all the way through once.
Okay, what pleased you about the programme? Let's start positively about this.
I mean, it's a tough one because obviously it's a great insight, like for us supporters. It's great to see what actually goes on because I mean, as a football fan, there's not many. You know, you can't really see what goes on in many clubs. I mean, you tune in on a Saturday, you see an hour before who's starting, who's playing, and you get your press conferences and your interviews, and that's about it. You don't actually get access, and this is great for us because you can actually see what's going on, and you can see like how down to earth the club is. I mean, I love the fact how they speak to everyone. They speak to the chefs.
Yeah.
They speak to the groundsmen, the kitmen. They speak to everybody involved, and they all kind of have the same theory, which is really good. And obviously, you can say how passionate the fans are, and hopefully, everyone else can say how passionate the fans are as well. So
we can see how passionate you are now.
Sorry?
We can see how passionate you are now. You've just joined us on video as if by magic.
Yeah.
Like you weren't doing anything circumspect there.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, no, it's.
I do want to. We have to ask because there's so much heartache that goes on the 2 trips to Wembley, etc. What disappointed you about the series, the second series?
There was. It's a tough one because obviously I was watching knowing how it was going to end, so I was kind of getting myself prepared to be disappointed. Especially losing at Wembley twice. But I mean, it kind of, there was a couple of things which I kind of questioned and didn't quite understand why they happened. I mean, on deadline day when Stuart Donald's away in his business in Oxford, I know he might not be able to get up here, but it would have been nice to have him up here with Metvin and Tony Corton and that, and all discussing together, and Jack Ross as well, what they were going to do. It kind of felt a bit, well, it was panicked. We knew it was panicked at the time with Will Grigg, but it just kind of felt like there wasn't much behind it. I mean, you don't say everything on there, and it's, but it didn't feel well measured. It just felt like we need a striker, who we're going to get, Will Grigg, and that was it. And it, that for me was a little bit disappointing because you'd think there'd be a lot more preparation going into it, but there probably was. Like I say, you just didn't see it all on that. But other than that, I thought it was a well thought out series and a good watch, and certainly for the neutrals, it probably was a very good insight into the game.
Well, I'll tell you what, disappointing from our perspective. Ollie, in pure disgust, presumably, that we're discussing Sunderland on the programme, has decided to leave us temporarily. Hopefully he'll be back. Sorry, Ross, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Niall if his opinion of Stuart Donald or Charlie Methven or any of the key people involved had changed having watched the series.
In a way, yes. I think Stuart Donald. I actually always liked Stuart Donald. I've met him a few times, and he's a really, really nice bloke. But I think I always kind of half struggled with the fact that he didn't really have any emotional connections with Sunderland, and he was an Oxford fan, and I kind of struggled with the fact, how can you become this passionate about something for love more than money if you don't have any involvement in it? But watching that, you can see how red in the face he gets, at the playoff semi-final at Pratton Park. You can see how involved he's getting, like when he's trying to sign Will Grigg, like I touched on before. You can see how much it means to him, and I do think it was more than money. Don't get us wrong, he might have took over the club just to make money. He might have done, I don't know, but it seems like watching that he was there because he cared. And he really, really, really did want us to succeed, and you could tell how devastated he was when we didn't.
And do you, in that case, bearing in mind what you've just said about Stuart Donald there, Niall, I know obviously there's a lot of talk over who's going to be owning Sunderland in the near future. Of course, Stuart is looking to try and sell the club. Would you still be in favour of that, or would you prefer to have Stuart Donald still involved with the club in any way?
I personally wasn't. I didn't back the Stuart Donald out campaign. I didn't think it was right. I agree with all the things he says. Yes, not everything he said has happened, but I still think his heart's in the right place. And certainly since watching Sunderland Till I Die, that comes more evident. But obviously, if he's going to sell to investors who are going to come in and get the club back to the heights of the Premier League, then obviously I'm going to be for it. But I would like for him to remain on the board. I think that would be good. And obviously he's a good businessman, and like you say, he's an obvious football fan. So yeah, if he is to sell, I hope it's a case of a joint ownership, or like I say, the new owners, they'll invest or help us in that way, and he can remain on the board and he can remain trying to get the club in the right direction.
Just a couple of final ones now before we get Ollie in to debate with you about the merits of Sunderland and Sunderland Till I Die documentary. Just the current situation, obviously, with COVID-19, the current pausing, shall we say, of the league seasons. Where do you stand on it, resumption or cancellation?
I would resume it if you can. I just don't see the fairness in cancelling the league now. We're too far into the season. I mean, I know you had the South Shields chairman on before. I didn't hear what he said, but I'm sure he's absolutely devastated about what's going on and the fact that if the club doesn't get promoted, and I don't think that's fair. Coventry, I mean, they've had more heartache than Sunderland, believe it or not, in recent history, and for them not to go up after they've had such a good season, I mean, let's be real, it would be horrible. In Leeds, look at Leeds. I mean, although a lot of people might find that humorous in a sense, it would still be, it wouldn't be fair on them. So no, I think you need to find a way of finishing the league. Definitely, I would not ever dream of cancelling it.
I've never heard a Sunderland fan before say anything positive about Coventry City. So, Niall, we really appreciate that at the very least.
Honest.
I just finally, before you do disappear, bring Ollie in on this one, because we did have a little bit of debate about this last week, and Ollie mentioned the fact that Sunderland necessarily wasn't a big club. Ollie, do you remember this one?
No, I never said that there wasn't. I said I couldn't see them on the map. It's different. I didn't say they were not a big club.
I suppose that's debate over then in that case. I can hear you backtracking from Newcastle now. But Niall, just a very, very finally for you, before you do carry on with your evening, I just want to kind of look at the future for Sunderland. What is it going to take before we see Sunderland top end Championship and hopefully one day back in the Premier League again? Million dollar question to finish things off.
I'll be honest, and I said this since we went down to League One. There was too many bad things happening, too many bad decisions made at that club, all in a short period of time. And I think because of that, you can see this on the document, it's going to take a long time to put right all them wrongs. And I think that we could be in League One for another 2 or 3 years. But Sunderland, despite what Olivier says, are such a big club. And I think once the ball's rolling, and once you get momentum, it's something just like what happened 20 years ago when they lost the playoff final against Charlton. They then went and had the best 4 or 5 years in their recent history. So I think once you get the ball rolling, once you get someone who knows what they're talking about in the club and knows football, I think it could be sooner rather than later. But I do think it's not going to be, it's not going to happen overnight, unfortunately.
Well, Niall, thank you very, very much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. And thank you for being patient, waiting literally until the end of the programme to come on. It's much appreciated. Stay safe, take care of yourself, and we'll catch up with you soon, all right?
Cheers, lads. Thank you. Thank you for having us on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. I know how difficult it is. Good luck.
I tell you what, Ollie, I like your style. You wait for him to go before you start chucking in the zingers. Massively appreciate that.
I want to support them anyway. You know what I mean?
That was Niall Bromley from a Roker report, which allows us to round off the programme on a very, very high note, on a positive note. As we tend to do every week, we are quickly running out of time, so we can't dedicate enough time as I would have liked to this particular feature. Fantasy football. No football means no fantasy football, you'd have thought. Well, think again. 3 football enthusiasts have simulated a new Championship Manager game in 2001, 2002, I think it was, and set up fantasy football around it, which gave us a bit of an idea. We were going to put a poll out, which we did, get you to vote, choose a season for our pundits, and they'll choose a team from that year. 1999 to 2000 was the year. We are going to have to be quick with this, so we chose a 4-4-2 formation. That's goalkeeper, right back, 2 centre-backs, left back, centre midfielders ×2, left wing, right wing, 2 strikers. Let's see what you've got, boys. Let's go with goalkeeper first. And if one of you has gone and checked on the PFA Team of the Year and has literally just copied and pasted, I will be fuming. But carry on. Mark, let's go with you first for goalkeeper.
Yeah, I've gone with a keeper that was in his first season in the Premier League. And I think managed to keep the most clean sheets in the Premier League. Certainly conceded a few goals. That was Sander Westerveld at Liverpool.
Okay.
I'll just check my notes quickly because I did make some for once. Only conceded 30 goals in the Premier League that season.
Strong case. Ollie, have we got any advances on Sander Westerveld at Liverpool? I should have asked, have you done a team?
I have.
Who's in goal for you?
I went for Shea. I went for Shea Given.
Okay, excellent.
Not just because he's a friend, but because for me, he he was one of the better ones. Mm-hmm. In a better side, he would have been a better player. I think he's done great for the club. And anyway, it's been
interesting. Okay, Ross, goalkeeper for you.
Westerveld for me as well.
Westerveld has 2 votes. I was going to pick Nigel Martin at Leeds, but no. I thought Nigel Martin had a magnificent season in 99 or 2000, but my opinion doesn't matter. I tend to sit on the fence.
I've been telling you that for years.
Not in this context, mate. Not in this context. We'll go on to the right back very quickly, guys, because obviously we've got 10 more players to choose. Rather than explaining reasons, let's go with names. Ross, right back.
Lee Dixon.
Okay. Mark.
Gary Kelly at Leeds.
Gary Kelly. You're essentially going off the PFA Player of the Year team at the moment, minus the goalkeeper. Ollie, what have you got?
Me, I didn't go for a 4-4-2, so I had 3 centre backs.
Okay,
I couldn't pick a decent right back.
That's fine, mate. That's fine.
So I had to change. So as a wing back, I went for Nobby Solano.
Lovely. Tell you what, give us your other 2 defenders, and give us your defenders, and we'll work with Mark and Ross's defenders very, very quickly. So who's in defence for you?
My back 3, Sol Campbell.
Yeah.
Rio Ferdinand. And Woodgate.
And Woodgate. Okay. And who was the left wing back?
Ashley Cole, obviously.
Ashley Cole. Okay. Mark, defenders.
Yeah, so Jaap Stam, who was just one of the best in the world at that point.
Yeah.
Sami Hyypiä, another one his first season at Liverpool.
Oh, no, come on.
Big part of that.
I knew we left more time for this.
I know. And left back was Ian Hogg as well, who was probably the best left back in the Premier League for a long time afterwards.
Listen.
Deadly kick on him as well. Ross, defenders.
Stam at centre half.
Yeah.
Centre half partner. I was torn between Sami Hyypiä and Gareth Southgate, because Southgate had an outstanding season.
Southgate.
Yeah. So either Hyypiä or Southgate. I'm quite happy to go with either of them. And Hart at left back. Hart was superb that season. Scored 12 or 13 goals from left back.
Yeah, he was exceptional that season. Right, okay, midfield. Mark, let's start with you for midfield.
Do you want my whole midfield?
Yes, please. We're starting to run out of time.
Yeah, no problem.
It carries on text.
Right wing was Beckham. It was exceptional that year.
Okay.
Centre midfield, probably not a massive choice, but sorry, not a massive surprise, I should say. But Roy Keane and Paul Scholes in centre midfield. Not Vieira, sorry. And on the left is Harry Kewell, who I think probably had the best season of his career that year.
Fair enough. Ross, let's go to you. Midfielders.
Beckham, Keane. Alongside Keane, I had Gus Poyet.
Good choice.
That's how it should.
Yeah.
Great shout.
16, 17 goals that season, and in the FA Cup, he's 2 against Newcastle in the semi-final, and I think he scored in the quarter-finals as well.
Yep.
So he's alongside Keane, and left side I had Harry Kewell as well.
Cool. I thought he'd get a few votes. Ollie, any advances for your?
For me, it was Roy Keane, Paul Scholes, and Kewell.
And Kewell as well. We're getting no Vieira. I can't believe there's no Vieira in there, but it was a good year for midfielders. All right, forwards to round things off. Ollie, let's finish off with you for forwards.
Well, for forwards, I had Thierry Henry and Bergkamp.
Strong. Ross, let's go with you.
I had, and I don't see how you can not pick him. I had Kevin Phillips.
I knew you were going to say that. I know why Ollie can't pick him.
Yeah, well,
Who is it?
It's just waiting for that. It's like
the name rings the bell, but
Yeah.
but I can't see the.
not the attraction. Not been top scorer a Golden Boot winner that season, no.
Not that I played with him, but yeah.
alongside Phillips, I struggled for the one alongside Phillips. I shortlisted it down to 3.
Yeah.
One was Mr. Shearer with 30 goals, and Bobby Robson reignited his career that season. Another one was Dwight York, who had a great season for Man United. But I decided to go for another ex-Sunderland, this time manager, Paulo Di Canio.
Are you kidding me?
Come on, not Ollie. I am not.
No, come on, boss.
The thing is, Ollie, Ross texted me before the programme and said he knew you were back on.
Sensational.
It's not working, is it?
He was sensational that season. Sensational.
No, he was cute. He was cute. But come on, we're talking about.
While these two are arguing, what's your strike? Who are your strikers?
No,
Well, I think
loads of forwards. Come on.
I think Phillips was the essential one in this one because he won European Golden Boot that year.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I also considered Di Canio, if I'm being perfectly honest. But in the end, I did go with Shearer because I think that season he kind of he summed up the rejuvenation under Bobby Robson. He started the season poorly, was out the side at one point under Hullett. Bobby came in and everything changed after that. And I think he scored 24 in the league, which was an exceptional return. So yeah, Shearer and Phillips for me.
Okay, right. Let's go with this. This is what I've come to, and you can argue amongst yourselves. Sorry, Ollie, Kevin Phillips is in it.
We'll do that off air.
Okay.
But,
No, I'll Google him after.
We will come up with a final team off air, and we will distribute it on social media channels. I promise. So I wish we'd had more time for that. Next week we were going to do one of these every single week. We will leave more time for it so we can have a bit more debate, even if we have to debate 1999 to 2000 again. Largely because Kevin Phillips is apparently riling Ollie up just a little bit. So
Andy, next week can we do 3-5-2, but Ollie does 4-4-2.
No, I'm trying to find the better players. The formation comes after. I go for the players and then I put them in the team in it.
We will leave that debate for another week, Ollie. I reckon. Please. For next week predominantly, and another year.
Or
next
do it
week.
Offline.
Don't do what you did last week and stay offline and say bye after everyone had gone. We will do it all over again next week. Keep your eye on our social media for our poll to decide what year it's going to be. And that brings us to the end of this week's programme. It's been a long one. It's been a very, very informative one, we would hope, for you. Thank you to all of our guests tonight, Geoff Thompson, Alisha Henry and Niall Bromley. And of course, our big 3 pundits. I use the word big in terms of well-known rather than any size comments that are going on around the programme. To Ross Gregory, Mark Carruthers and Ollie Bernard. Gents, thank you very much. Mark, quiz back on Thursday?
It is, yes. Back at 8:10 on Thursday night, and I can reveal it's a goalkeepers special. So plenty of questions in there about goalkeepers.
Lovely. No Sanders Vesterveld or Shea given insight.
And I'm going to jump in quickly and say I did have a nice chat with Mr. Bernard on Friday night, and there's a piece coming out on Wednesday on the Set Pieces website about when he played in the San Siro, when he kicked Sergio Conceição all over the San Siro.
The true defender.
Tell you what, let's refer to that next week. If you can't use Football Matters for a good plug, what can you use it for? Gents, thank you very, very much for your time. See you in 7 days. Take care of yourselves, and we'll be back with more Football Matters in 7 days, which is hopefully when we see the rest of you as well. Stay safe, stay indoors. Let's carry on beating this thing because, like I keep saying, while football matters, health matters even more. Take care. We'll see you in 7 days for more Football Matters. Bye for now.